What you see here is the very first version, which I never actually published, of what I now call the mobile growth stack. And this was basically just my attempt at my early days at SoundCloud to just sort of figure out what were the levers for growth for a mobile app. I was basically charged with driving adoption of SoundCloud on mobile and driving adoption of the native mobile apps. And I put together this way of just conceptualizing how to tackle growth based on the kind of key objectives: acquisition, retention, monetization, built on a layer of insight, which is that bottom layer that you see. And with international, I figured international efforts are basically like a multiplier for all of these other activities, which is why it's like a cross section. Basically today, I'm going to present a whistle-stop tour of this framework that I published called the Mobile Growth Stack. A little bit of just very quick history of that, as well as then calling out some of the new stuff that we see being kind of relevant and interesting in terms of trends in 2017, basically the new additions that we added to that stack. And yeah, I'm going to go quite fast through this stuff, but I'll try and leave some time for questions at the end, and you can read more about it at mobilegrowthstack.com. So, yeah, just a little about me. David already introduced me, really. So yeah, a lot of experience in mobile. I've been basically working in mobile my whole career. Started at Nokia back in the very early days, where I developed a game called Space Impact, which some of you may have played. More recently, leading growth teams at SoundCloud, also focused on mobile. And now, partner at Phiture, which is my next slide. And at Phiture, we basically help companies all over the world to take a more strategic and holistic view of growth. We help them apply the mobile growth stack, help them identify opportunities, and yeah, basically help them grow their mobile apps. And we're hiring, by the way. So if you're interested in growth and you're excited to work with some of the world's leading apps, then please get in touch. Okay, so what you see here is the very first version, which I never actually published, of what I now call the mobile growth stack. And this was basically just my attempt at my early days at SoundCloud to just sort of figure out what were the levers for growth for a mobile app. I was basically charged with driving adoption of SoundCloud on mobile and driving adoption of the native mobile apps. And I put together this way of just conceptualizing how to tackle growth based on the kind of key objectives: acquisition, retention, monetization, built on a layer of insight, which is that bottom layer that you see. And with international, I figured international efforts are basically like a multiplier for all of these other activities, which is why it's like a cross section. So I developed it some more, and actually I published it in a blog post in December 2014, and it went down really well. I'm not going to go through all the detail in here. You can read about this at Mobile Growth Stack if you want to kind of get into the detail, into the weeds. But basically, I published this version, and then I started to see things like this. The CMO at the time of Gram Games came up very excited to me at a conference one time and showed me hey, we're actually using this growth stack to basically drive the development of our games. And they're actually, they're making hit games. They have some blockbusters. So it was really exciting to see, that this framework was definitely useful to other people and not just to me in my job at SoundCloud. So it was really great and affirming to see that. Same when Greylock Partners ran a portfolio workshop based on the stack and the blog post. And so I kind of kept developing it, also working with Moritz, who's the partner at Phiture. And so this was the next version that I released, a bit more complex still. I don't like adding complexity, but mobile is quite a complex space, and I wanted to basically have a one-page cheat sheet that really kind of encapsulated everything that a good growth marketer could be doing and could form part of a strategy. So the idea of this stack is not that you have to do all of these things, but rather you should take into consideration everything that's possible to do so that you can actually figure out what makes sense in your strategic situation, right? In this version, I broke out the channels into a separate part on the right. And basically, yeah, there were some other tweaks, but that was the main thing, separating activities from channels. Google actually adapted the framework, kind of made a Google-centric version, which they then presented it to the mobile developers at the Google Playtime events. This was fantastic validation, I think, of the framework, and we were very happy to see it there. And yeah, that basically brings us to today, and yeah, basically the stack which I published at the end of last year for 2017. And I've highlighted the changes and the new stuff in red. And I'm basically going to call out a few of those in the next sort of 10 minutes or so. Basically just to kind of call out some changes that we made and why we did that, as well as, yeah, basically some trends that we see sort of happening in the industry, which might be quite disruptive to how companies can distribute or drive engagement with their mobile apps. Oh yeah, and here's the 2017 mobile stack. We started doing posters, so companies can actually use them on their wall, like Gram Games does, but without having to print them out themselves. Yeah, right, so I'm going to dive right in. We put product at the core of the engagement and retention layer, because I think the perception I realized with some people was that this was just like a marketing stack, and that actually, you know, I got asked, like, where does product fit in? Surely product's super important. Product is absolutely important. If you don't have an engaging product, and I think this follows on very neatly from the last talk, you know, like if you don't have product market fit, and if you don't, you know, you don't have something which is fundamentally serving some purpose and delivering some value to your users, then, you know, you can forget about lifecycle marketing or community engagement. You're really not going to have retention over the long term. So really everything starts with product, and also most of the really fundamental changes that you can make that will really move the needle on engagement and retention are likely to be in product. Like, you know, when you have an engaging product that's really kind of like ticking the right boxes, then you can definitely layer additional like impact on top with other activities in that layer. But we stuck it right at the front.